My name is Elena Rivers, and I'm 18 years old. At my graduation dinner, my mother stood up with a wine glass in her hand and told everyone in the restaurant that I wasn't their responsibility anymore. Just like that, with relatives watching and my stepfather nodding coldly, I walked out with nothing but a backpack and nowhere to go. That night, as I sat alone on a park bench wondering if I'd even survive the week, the lunch lady from my school found me in the dark. Ms. Harlow grabbed my wrist, pressed a rusty key into my palm, and whispered something that made my blood run cold. "Don't go to the bridge tonight. Be at the place this key belongs tomorrow at 9 a.m. I need to show you the truth." What she revealed the next morning shattered everything I thought I knew about my life, my family, and why I was really kicked out that night. If you're watching this video right now, drop a comment telling me where you're from, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear more stories. I walked into the restaurant with my graduation cap still in my hand, the tassels swinging like it was celebrating something. Balloons clustered around the tables in bright blues and golds, our school colors. A banner that read, "Congratulations, graduate," hung crooked on the back wall, one corner drooping like it had given up trying. My mother stood up the second she saw me, a wine glass already in her hand, half empty. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. It never did. "Everyone, can I have your attention?" she called out, tapping her glass with a fork. The sound was sharp, cutting through the ambient noise like a blade. The chatter died down. Aunts, uncles, cousins I barely knew, they all turned to look at me. I felt my cheeks flush hot. I hated being the center of attention, but this was my graduation dinner. My moment. I forced a smile and waited for whatever sentimental speech she'd prepared. Maybe something about being proud. Maybe something about my future. "Elena is 18 now," my mother began, her voice steady and clear, projecting across the room like she was giving a toast. "She's officially an adult. A real adult. And that means she's not our responsibility anymore." The room went silent. Not the good kind of silent where everyone's listening intently. The uncomfortable, suffocating kind where people shift in their seats and suddenly find their plates very interesting. I laughed nervously, looking around for someone else to break the tension. Someone to tell me this was a joke. A prank. "Mom, what are you?" "You heard me," she said, cutting me off mid-sentence. Her face was cold, almost bored, like she was discussing the weather. "You're 18. You can figure life out on your own now. We're done." My stepfather nodded from his seat, arms crossed over his chest, his expression as blank as always. My stepbrother, Dylan, smirked into his napkin like this was the punchline to a joke I hadn't heard. His shoulders shook with silent laughter. I felt my stomach twist into knots. "You're kidding, right? This is some kind of—" "We've done our part," my mother continued, setting her glass down with a soft clink against the tablecloth. "We fed you. We housed you. We put you through school. We gave you everything you needed. But that chapter is over now. You're an adult. Act like one." "Over?" My voice cracked, betraying the panic rising in my chest. "What are you talking about? I don't understand." "You know what you've cost us, Elena." She said it like I'd stolen something precious from her. Like I owed her money I could never repay. Like my very existence was a debt I'd failed to settle. I looked around the table desperately. Aunt Margaret wouldn't meet my eyes. Uncle Tom stared at his wine. My cousin Sarah looked uncomfortable but said nothing. No one spoke. No one defended me. They just stared, some of them nodding slightly, like they'd expected this all along. Like they'd been waiting for this moment. My chest tightened. I could barely breathe. "What did I cost you?"
"Tell me."
"What did I do?" She didn't answer. She just sat back down slowly and picked up her fork, cutting into her steak with deliberate precision, like the conversation was over. Like I was dismissed. I stood there for what felt like forever, my hands trembling at my sides, my graduation cap still clutched in my left hand. The restaurant suddenly felt too hot, too bright, too loud. Then I picked up my small backpack from the floor beside my chair, the only thing I'd brought with me, and turned toward the door. "Good luck surviving," Dylan muttered behind me, just loud enough for me to hear. A few people at nearby tables glanced over. The clinking of forks and low murmurs followed me out like whispers I couldn't quite understand. I pushed through the heavy glass doors and stepped into the cold night air. The door swung shut behind me, muffling the sounds of the dinner that was supposed to celebrate me. I sat down on the curb in the parking lot under a flickering streetlight that buzzed and hummed above me. My phone buzzed. I pulled it out, hoping maybe someone had texted to check on me. Maybe Aunt Margaret. Maybe someone with a conscience. But it was just Dylan. One message. Good luck surviving. I scrolled through my contacts, my vision blurring with tears. There was no one. No close friends. No relatives who cared enough. I'd spent so much time just trying to survive high school, keep my grades up, stay invisible, that I'd never built connections. And now I had nowhere to go. No plan.
No backup.
I started walking. I didn't know where. Just away from that restaurant. Away from those people. Away from the life that had just collapsed around me. The streets were quiet, almost eerie. My feet carried me through neighborhoods I recognized but never really belonged to. Houses with warm lights in the windows. Families inside, probably laughing, probably safe. I thought about Miss Harlow, the old lunch lady at school.
She was always kind to me.
On days when I didn't have lunch money, which happened more often than I wanted to admit, she'd slide me an extra roll or a juice box without saying anything. She never made me feel ashamed. I'd always try to slip a few dollars into the donation jar by her station when I could, even if it was just $1 or $2. I wondered if she even remembered me. Probably not. I was just another kid passing through her line. By midnight, I ended up at the small park I passed every day on my way to school. The bench wasn't comfortable, cold metal with peeling green paint, but I had no other options. My phone battery was at 3%. My stomach growled loudly in the silence. The world suddenly felt way bigger than I could handle. Bigger and colder and more indifferent than I'd ever imagined. I lay down on the bench, pulling my thin jacket tighter around me. The night air bit at my skin, seeping through the fabric. I closed my eyes and tried not to cry. Tried not to think about where I'd sleep tomorrow. Or the next night. Or the night after that. That's when I saw it. A shadow in the distance, near the line of trees at the edge of the park. Someone standing there, leaning forward slightly, watching me. My skin crawled. I sat up slowly, squinting into the darkness. The figure didn't move. Didn't step forward or back. Just stood there, still as stone. Hello. I called out, my voice shaking and thin. No answer. Just silence and the distant sound of traffic. I told myself it was paranoia. Just my mind playing tricks after the worst night of my life. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. That someone was watching. Waiting. I tried to lie back down, but my heart wouldn't stop pounding. Every sound made me flinch. Every rustle of leaves. Every distant car door. Then I heard it. Slow, heavy footsteps. Deliberate. Getting closer.
Elena.
I froze. Someone knew my name. The figure stepped into the circle of light cast by the street lamp. And suddenly, I could see her face. It was Ms. Harlow. She knelt in front of me, her knees cracking slightly, her face full of concern and something else. Something that looked like fear. You shouldn't be here, she whispered urgently. Why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you call? I broke. The tears I'd been holding back poured down my face. I have no one else. No one. Ms. Harlow looked around nervously, her eyes scanning the park, the street, the shadows. Then she grabbed my hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong, almost painful. Listen carefully, she said, her voice shaking with urgency. Do not go to the bridge tonight. Do you understand me? Stay away from it. The bridge? I didn't understand. I hadn't planned to go anywhere. What bridge? Take this key. She pressed a rusted brass key into my palm, closing my fingers around it. The metal was cold and heavy. Be at the place it belongs tomorrow. 9 a.m. sharp. Everything will make sense. I promise you. Before I could ask anything, before I could ask her what was happening or why she looked so scared, she hurried away into the darkness, disappearing between the trees. My instincts screamed at me to leave. Every nerve in my body lit up with danger. I walked out fast, not looking back, my hands shaking. But he followed me. I could hear his footsteps behind me on the sidewalk, slow and deliberate, matching my pace. I sped up.
So, did he?
My breath came faster. I was practically jogging now. Then I heard him mutter under his breath, just loud enough for me to catch. She found her then. I spun around, my heart hammering.
Who are you?
What do you want? But he vanished between parked cars like smoke, disappearing into the shadows before I could get a good look at his face. Just gone.
I ran.
I didn't think. I just ran. I didn't stop until I reached a 24-hour diner 3 blocks away and ducked inside. The fluorescent lights were harsh and bright after the darkness. A tired waitress looked up from wiping down the counter. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely hold the key. I slid into a booth in the back corner where I could see the door, where I could see anyone coming. I turned the key over in the light, really looking at it for the first time. That's when I saw it. Faint letters etched into the side of the metal, almost invisible unless you knew to look. An address. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers, typed in the address, and waited for the map to load. It was an old brick building on the other side of town, in a neighborhood I'd never been to. A place I'd never seen before. The map showed it sitting on a corner, isolated. I stayed in that diner until sunrise, nursing a single cup of coffee the waitress took pity on me for. She refilled it twice without asking for payment, just giving me a sad, knowing look. When the first light crept through the windows, painting everything in soft gold, I left $1 on the table. All I had, and headed out. It took me nearly an hour to walk to the address. My feet ached. My whole body ached. By the time I arrived, the sun was fully up and the streets were starting to wake. Cars drove past. People walked dogs. Normal life happening all around me while mine was falling apart. The building looked abandoned. Boarded windows covered in layers of old newspaper. Peeling paint revealing brick underneath. Graffiti tagged across one side. Words I didn't understand. But something about it felt strangely familiar, like I'd seen it in a dream I couldn't quite remember. Like déjà vu, but deeper. I stood outside, clutching the key, waiting. Watching the corner for Miss Harlow. At exactly 9 a.m., she appeared, rounding the corner right on time. She was still wearing her cafeteria uniform, the same pale blue dress she wore every day. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept either. But her eyes were sharp, alert, scanning the street before she approached me. "You open it," she said quietly, nodding toward the door. "It's yours."
Mean it.
My voice came out smaller than I intended, like a child's. "What do you mean mine?" She didn't answer. She just waited, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. I stepped forward, my legs feeling weak. I slid the key into the lock with a hand that wouldn't stop shaking. It clicked smoothly, almost too smoothly, like it had been waiting for years. Waiting for me. Dust spiraled into the air as I pushed the heavy door open. It groaned on rusty hinges. The smell of old books, paper, and cold, stale air rushed out, making me cough. Inside was a small office. A file cabinet stood in the corner, dented and scratched. A desk sat in the center, covered with old mail and yellowed papers, envelopes with addresses I didn't recognize. A dusty photo frame lay face down, like someone had turned it over deliberately and never turned it back. I felt a strange pressure in my chest, like walking into a memory I didn't know I had. Like this place knew me even though I'd never been here. Ms. Harlow stepped inside and closed the door behind us firmly. She walked straight to the file cabinet like she knew exactly where she was going. She pulled open a drawer and reached inside, pulling out a folder. She held it up so I could see the label.
Rivers, A.
My name. My file. I stepped back, my spine hitting the wall. "How do you have my... Why is there a file with my name?" She raised her hand, cutting me off with a gesture. "There's something your family never wanted you to know. Something they've hidden from you your entire life." She opened the folder slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a document. A birth certificate. But not the one I'd seen before. Not the one my mother kept in the filing cabinet at home. My hands trembled as I took it from her. The paper felt old, official. The name on it under Mother wasn't the woman who raised me. It was someone I'd never heard of before. Marissa Fallon. What is this? My voice cracked, tears already forming. I don't understand. Who is Marissa Fallon? Miss Harlow looked me straight in the eyes, her expression sad but firm. You weren't abandoned, Elena. You were hidden. I stared at the paper in my hands, the words swimming as tears blurred my vision. Hidden? From what? From who?
And why?
And for the first time, I realized Miss Harlow knew far more than she'd ever admitted. She'd been watching me, protecting me, all these years. Who are you? I whispered. Miss Harlow sighed and pulled out a chair from behind the desk.
Sit down, Elena. This is going to take a while.
I sat, still clutching the birth certificate. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I haven't always been a lunch lady, she began. Years ago, I worked for a private investigative agency. I was assigned to protect you without revealing the truth. Protect me? I felt my entire world tilting. From what? From the same people your mother was running from. She walked over to the desk and opened a locked drawer underneath. The same key I'd used to open the door fit into a second slot when she turned it upside down. A hidden latch clicked and the drawer slid open. Inside were old photos, baby pictures, and in every single one, a woman who looked strikingly similar to me held a tiny infant in her arms. That's you, Miss Harlow said softly. And that's your biological mother, Marissa Fallon. I picked up one of the photos. The woman had my eyes, my nose, my smile. What happened to her? I asked. Ms. Harlow's face darkened. Marissa was involved in exposing a powerful financial crime syndicate. She gathered evidence, built a case, and was ready to go public. But before she could, she disappeared. Disappeared? They made her vanish. And you became a target too. So she arranged for you to be placed with a foster family. For protection. The Rivers, I whispered. Ms. Harlow nodded. They were never supposed to keep you forever. Just until it was safe. But they learned who your mother had crossed. After that, they wanted nothing to do with you. I thought about all the years of cold shoulders. The way my mother looked at me like I was a burden. The way my stepfather never spoke to me unless he had to. They knew, I said, my voice hollow. They knew the whole time. Ms. Harlow pulled out another photo. This one showed a symbol. A triangular crest. My stomach dropped. I recognized it immediately. I've seen that before, I said. On my stepfather's cufflinks. Ms. Harlow's jaw tightened. He wasn't just a foster parent, Elena. He was connected. He knew exactly who you were. And he was paid to keep you quiet and out of sight. I felt sick. My entire life had been a lie. A transaction. Miss Harlow, I said slowly, why did you follow me last night? How did you know about the bridge? She looked away. Because I was afraid they'd finally decided to solve their problem. Pushing a depressed 18-year-old toward a tragedy that looks like suicide? It wouldn't be the first time they've done it. My legs trembled. I could have been there. I could have been the one on that bridge. The man from the shelter, I whispered. He was following me. Ms. Harlow pulled out another folder. Inside were security photos. The same man from the lobby. His name appeared on a case file linked to Marissa's disappearance. He wasn't just following you, Ms. Harlow said. He was hunting you.
Why?
What do I have that they want? She leaned forward, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. Your mother left you something. Something powerful people still want. Something worth killing for. What is it? No one knows. Only that you're the key to finding it. Suddenly, Miss Harlow's phone buzzed. She pulled it out, and her face went pale. What? I asked. She grabbed my arm. They know you opened the door. Before I could respond, she moved to the window and pulled the blind shut. Then she walked to the cabinet and pulled out a duffel bag I hadn't noticed before. Inside were supplies. Rope. A burner phone. A map. We can't stay here, she said, her voice urgent. If they tracked the key, they're coming. I stood up, my heart pounding. Who's coming? Miss Harlow looked me straight in the eyes. The same people who took your mother. Within minutes, I heard them. Footsteps. Heavy and deliberate. Multiple sets. I peeked through a crack in the boarded-up window. 2 black SUVs had parked across the street. Men in suits stepped out, scanning the area. They moved with precision, like soldiers. "Come on," Ms. Harlow whispered, grabbing my wrist. She pulled me toward a narrow staircase in the corner I hadn't noticed before. We climbed fast, our footsteps echoing in the tight space. At the top was a door that led to the roof. The building was connected to another by a rusted maintenance bridge. It swayed slightly in the wind. I hesitated. "That doesn't look safe." "They won't shoot where cameras can see," Ms. Harlow said, pushing me forward. "Move." I ran across the bridge, my hands gripping the rails so tight my knuckles went white. Behind me, I heard the door to the roof slam open. "There," a voice shouted. We made it to the other side and kept running. Ms. Harlow led me across rooftops, behind chimneys, down fire escapes. My legs felt like they were going to give out, but adrenaline kept me moving. Finally, we dropped into an alley and blended into the early morning crowd. Ms. Harlow pulled me into a crowded antique store. An older man looked up from behind the counter. His face went tense when he saw us. "You brought the kid?" he said. "Then they're already watching everything." Ms. Harlow ignored him. "Do you still have it?" The man sighed and reached under the counter. He pulled out a sealed envelope. The same triangular crest was stamped on it, except this version had a slash through it. "Your mother left this behind," he said, handing it to me. We never opened it. I tore it open. Inside was a handwritten note. "If you're reading this, it means I failed to return. The truth is hidden where you first learned to walk." There was also a map. A red circle marked a suburban address I didn't recognize. But the moment I looked at it, something clicked. A memory. Faint and blurry, but real. Grass. A white fence. A red swing. A woman's voice singing softly. "I know this place," I whispered. Ms. Harlow looked at the map. "Then, that's where we're going." Before we could move, a loud banging shook the front door. "Open up. We know she's inside." The old man nodded toward a bookcase in the back. "Go. Now." Ms. Harlow pulled the bookcase aside, revealing a trapdoor. We climbed down into darkness. An old Prohibition-era passageway stretched out beneath the shop. We ran through the narrow corridor, lit only by a dim flashlight Ms. Harlow pulled from the duffel bag. The sound of footsteps pounding above us grew fainter. We ran until we couldn't hear them anymore. Then we stopped, breathless, leaning against the cold stone walls. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, gasping for air. "You owe me nothing." Ms. Harlow looked at me, and for the first time, I saw tears in her eyes. "Because I made a promise to your mother the night she saved my life." "She saved you?" Ms. Harlow nodded. "Years ago, the same people after you now were after me. Marissa destroyed evidence that could have sent me to prison. She gave me a second chance. Protecting you is how I pay that debt." I realized then that this wasn't just protection. This was loyalty. Something deeper than duty. We emerged from the tunnel into an alley on the other side of town. We took a bus, then walked 3 miles until we reached the address circled on the map. A small, ivy-covered house sat quietly at the end of a cul-de-sac. It looked abandoned, but I felt something pulling me toward it, like my bones remembered it even if my mind didn't. I walked up to the front door. My hands trembled as I slid the same brass key into the lock. It clicked smoothly. Too smoothly. "How many places does this key open?" I whispered. Ms. Harlow didn't answer. But the sound of the lock turning felt final, like this was the house the key was truly meant for. I pushed the door open. Dust covered every surface, but the air felt warm. Lived in. Through cracked French doors, I saw the backyard. A red wooden swing sat there, swaying slightly in the breeze. The same swing from my dream. I walked toward it, my legs moving on their own. I touched the handle, and suddenly, fragments came flooding back. A woman singing. hands pushing me gently. The faint smell of citrus. Tears poured down my face. I didn't know if they were real memories or just wishful thinking. "This was my home," I whispered. Ms. Harlow placed a hand on my shoulder.
Yes, it was.
We climbed the creaking staircase. One room upstairs was untouched. A nursery, a crib, a faded mobile, baby blankets with my initials embroidered on them. This wasn't just a house. This was where I was born, where I first existed, before everything fell apart. Behind a wardrobe, I noticed scratch marks on the floor, like something had been dragged repeatedly. "Help me move this," I said. Together, we pushed the wardrobe aside. Behind it was a narrow door.
Locked.
Ms. Harlow pulled out a thin metal tool and picked the lock with expert precision. The door opened to reveal a staircase leading down. We descended into a basement that looked nothing like the rest of the house. It was modern.
Clean.
File cabinets lined the walls. Computers sealed in plastic sat on a desk. Boxes labeled with dates filled the corners. And in the center of the room, bolted into the wall, was a large metal safe. "Whatever your mother was hiding," Ms. Harlow said, "it's here." I walked to the file cabinets and pulled one open. Folders.
Dozens of them.
Stamped with government agency seals. I pulled out the top folder. Inside were documents about a major money laundering scheme.
Names. Dates.
Transactions. And on several pages, I saw my stepfather's full name. My hand shook so badly, I almost dropped the folder. "My entire life," I whispered. He was pretending. Ms. Harlow walked over to the safe. She pulled out the map and turned it over. On the back was a code scribbled in faint ink. She punched it into the safe's keypad. It beeped, then clicked open. Inside was a single item, a recorded video chip, labeled, "For Elena, when she's ready." We found an old monitor and played it. The screen flickered to life. And there she was, Marissa Fallon, my mother. She looked directly into the camera. Her voice was calm but urgent. "If you're seeing this, Elena, they found me. I don't know how long I have. You are in danger too. The people who want this information will stop at nothing." I couldn't breathe. It was the first time I'd ever heard her real voice. At the end of the video, she whispered a location. Then a warning. "There's one last thing you must see. But don't go alone." The screen went black. I turned to Ms. Harlow, trembling. "I'm going." She nodded. "We both are." Ms. Harlow opened a hidden cabinet in the basement wall. Inside were survival supplies, burner phones, water bottles, protein bars, a first aid kit, and wrapped in cloth, a gun. I recoiled. "Ms. Harlow, this isn't a fight," she said firmly. "It's to get you home alive." I nodded. 24 hours ago, I was graduating high school. Now I was running for my life. As we prepared to leave, I grabbed files from the cabinet, stuffing them into my backpack. Evidence. Proof. We left through the back door, moving quickly. The neighborhood was quiet. Too quiet. That's when I noticed them, unfamiliar cars circling the cul-de-sac slowly, all with tinted windows. "They found us," I whispered. Ms. Harlow grabbed my arm and pulled me behind hedges. "Stay low. Move fast." We cut through backyards, hopping fences, ducking behind sheds. My lungs burned. My legs ached. But fear kept me moving. On the way to the location for my mother's video, Ms. Harlow yanked me behind a dumpster. Two men in suits walked past. "Come out, Elena," one called, his voice smooth. "We just want to talk. We can help you understand what your mother was really involved in." My heart hammered. Ms. Harlow kept her hand over my mouth until they passed. We needed somewhere safe. Ms. Harlow led me to an old church, its side entrance unlocked. Inside, dust covered the pews. The air smelled of old wood and forgotten prayers. We sat in the back, catching our breath. That's when Ms. Harlow told me the full story. Years ago, I was in trouble. The same organization your mother was investigating had evidence against me. Evidence that would have sent me to prison for 20 years. I listened, watching her face. "Your mother found that evidence first. She could have used it, could have turned me in. But she didn't. She destroyed it. Every copy. She gave me a second life, Elena. She asked only one thing in return. To protect me, I whispered. Ms. Harlow nodded, tears in her eyes. When she disappeared, I knew what I had to do. I changed my name and became someone who could watch over you without raising suspicion. A lunch lady. Someone invisible. All these years, I said. You've been watching me every single day, and I would do it again. Before I could respond, a side door slammed open. The colleague from the antique shop stumbled in, breathing hard, blood trickling from his eyebrow. I tried to stall them, he gasped. But they followed me. They're coming. A bullet shattered a stained glass window. Glass exploded inward. We ducked behind the pews. There's a maintenance tunnel, the man shouted. Go. We ran. Behind us, footsteps thundered. More gunshots. We found the tunnel entrance behind the altar and descended into darkness. Miss Harlow clicked on a flashlight, and we ran through the narrow passageway until the sounds above faded. We emerged near a quiet pier on the edge of town. The smell of salt water filled the air. Boats rocked gently in their slips. The coordinates from my mother's video pointed to a storage unit just a few yards away, tucked between an old bait shop and a closed seafood restaurant. The storage unit door was locked with 3 separate padlocks. Ms. Harlow worked on them methodically, her tools clicking and scraping until each one fell away. Inside was a massive metal trunk, covered in dust and rust. Together, we dragged it out into the light. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were stacks of documents. Bank statements showing millions of dollars moving through offshore accounts. Photos of men in expensive suits shaking hands with politicians I recognized from the news. Lists of names, dates, transactions. And at the very top, a signed confession implicating my stepfather and a group of elite officials in a money laundering operation that spanned decades. This was it. This was what my mother had died protecting. This could destroy them, I whispered, flipping through page after page. All of them. That's why they want it so badly, Ms. Harlow said. And that's why they'll never stop hunting you. Before we could move, before we could even think about what to do next, I heard them. Engines. Multiple vehicles. Black vans swarmed the pier from both directions, boxing us in. Dozens of men in suits poured out, surrounding the storage unit. Surrounding us. And then I heard a voice I recognized. A voice that made my blood run cold. My stepfather stepped out of the lead van, his expression calm and collected. He looked at me like I was a problem he was finally going to solve. Come out, Elena, he called across the pier, his voice carrying over the water. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be. We can still talk. We can still work this out like civilized people. I stood slowly, my legs shaking. Ms. Harlow tried to pull me back, but I stepped forward, the confession file clutched in my hands. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It never had. You've caused quite a bit of trouble, he said, walking closer. Your mother did too. Look where that got her. You knew, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. You knew who I was from the beginning. You took money to keep me quiet, to keep me hidden, to make sure I never learned the truth. I provided for you, he said coldly. I gave you a home, food, an education. That's more than most foster kids get. You gave me nothing but lies. He sighed, like I was being unreasonable. Come with me now, Elena. Give me the file. We'll compensate you. Generously. You can have money, safety, a new identity. You can disappear and live whatever life you want. Or, his expression darkened. You can refuse, and we'll solve this problem the way we should have solved it years ago. I looked at him, this man who'd pretended to be my father, who'd sat across from me at dinner tables for 18 years without ever once looking at me like I mattered. No, I said simply. His jaw tightened. He snapped his fingers. 2 men grabbed Miss Harlow, yanking her arms behind her back. She struggled, but they held her tight. Then let me be perfectly clear, my stepfather said, his voice dropping to something dark and dangerous. You're your mother's daughter. And that makes you a threat we can no longer afford to ignore. The pierce suddenly felt colder than it had any right to be. I had seconds to decide. Give him the file, or fight back. Instead, I did something unexpected. I tossed the confession file into the air as hard as I could. Papers scattered like feathers, caught by the wind. Chaos erupted. Men dove for the papers, shouting. My stepfather screamed orders. For a brief moment, no one watched me. Miss Harlow and I locked eyes. She gave me the smallest nod. I ran straight for the edge and jumped. The freezing water hit me like a punch. I gasped, swallowing salt water, my clothes immediately heavy. I heard a splash. Miss Harlow had followed. Bullets tore through the surface, leaving trails of bubbles. We dove deeper, swimming toward the dock pilings. My lungs screamed for air. Everything was dark and cold. But I kept swimming. We surfaced under a dock, gasping. Above us, footsteps ran. Flashlight beams cut through the gaps. Under here, Ms. Harlow whispered, teeth chattering. We found it between two pilings, a small fishing boat with keys in the ignition. We climbed aboard, dripping and shaking. Ms. Harlow turned the key. The engine sputtered, then roared to life. We sped away as headlights converged. Gunshots flared. I heard my stepfather screaming my name, but his voice grew smaller until it was swallowed by the waves. As we raced across dark water, Miss Harlow told me the worst truth yet. Elena, she said over the engine, your mother wasn't kidnapped.
Ich sagte her. What?
She turned herself in. To the organization. She knew they'd use you as leverage. So she surrendered to protect you. She traded her life for yours. Tears poured down my face. My mother had sacrificed everything to keep me safe. Where are we going? I asked. The second location your mother mentioned. An island. There's an old lighthouse. She set it up as a safe house years ago. The boat ride felt endless. Cold wind whipped my face. Eventually, I saw it. A small island with an abandoned lighthouse. We docked at a crumbling pier. The lighthouse door was unlocked. Inside, electricity still worked. Emergency supplies lined shelves. And on a table, a sealed envelope marked E. Final. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter in my mother's handwriting. I recognized it from the documents we'd found, elegant and precise. My dearest Elena, it began. If you're reading this, then you've survived what I couldn't. You've found the truth I died protecting. I need you to know that none of this was your fault. You were never meant to live a hunted life. You were supposed to be free, safe, happy. But the world is cruel sometimes, and the powerful protect themselves at any cost. I'm urging you now to take everything you've found and expose it. Not to the police, they're compromised. Not to officials, they're paid off. But to the world. Release it all. Let everyone see what these people have done, what they continue to do. Shine a light so bright they can't hide anymore. But know this. Anyone who learns what you know will try to silence you. Trust no one except those who've already proven their loyalty with their lives. And remember always that I loved you more than anything in this world. I would do it all again if it meant you got one more day of freedom. Be brave, my darling girl. Be braver than I was. All my love, Marissa. I folded the letter carefully and pressed it against my chest, sobbing. Ms. Harlow found a functioning satellite transmitter in the lighthouse's equipment room, covered in dust but operational. She set it up while I gathered the files, the photos, the evidence, everything we had. We're going to upload it all, I said, wiping my tears away. Everything, just like she wanted. Ms. Harlow looked at me with pride. Then let's burn it all down. We packaged the files digitally, scanning page after page. Ms. Harlow knew how to route it through anonymous servers, how to send it to hundreds of journalists, whistleblower networks, news organizations, and leak sites simultaneously. As we worked, a crackling sound came from an old boat radio on a shelf. I turned it on. My stepfather's voice filled the room, enraged and desperate. Search every island, every dock, every boat. Find her. I want everyone on this. Now. He wasn't giving up. They'd be here soon. Maybe we had hours. Maybe less. Ms. Harlow and I looked at each other. We both knew what this meant. Upload it all, I said. No matter what happens, we upload it all. She nodded and pressed the button. The upload began. Files started transferring. 1%, 2%, 3%. Then I saw them through the window. Lights on the horizon. Speedboats. Multiple engines roaring across the water toward us. They're coming, I whispered. Ms. Harlow checked the gun she'd brought. Then we hold them off until it finishes. The upload continued. 10%. 15%. The boats grew closer, their engines growing louder. I stood at the window, watching them approach, my heart pounding but my resolve steady. My mother had given everything for this moment, and I wasn't going to let her sacrifice be in vain. The speedboats reached the island within minutes. I watched through the lighthouse window as armed men jumped out, boots splashing in shallow water. They moved with military precision, fanning out, surrounding the lighthouse. Barricade the door, Ms. Harlow shouted. We pushed furniture against the entrance, a heavy desk, chairs, anything we could move. The upload progress bar crawled forward. 25%. 30%. Gunshots rang out. Bullets punched through the wooden door. Splinters exploded inward. I dropped to the floor, my heart hammering. Ms. Harlow crouched beside the transmitter, protecting it with her body. Keep it uploading, I said. No matter what. The door shuddered as they rammed it from outside. The barricade held, but barely. We didn't have much time. 40%. 45%. Then the door burst open. The desk toppled. My stepfather came through first, gun in his hand, his face twisted with rage. You think the world will believe an 18-year-old over me? He shouted. Over all of us? You're delusional, Elena. Just like your mother. I stood slowly, pulling my mother's letter from my pocket. I held it up so he could see. No, I said, my voice steady despite my fear. But they'll believe the evidence. They'll believe the documents, the bank statements, the photos, the confession with your signature on it. His face went pale. You don't have the confession. It's scattered into the water. I have copies, I lied. But my voice was confident. My mother wasn't stupid. She made sure multiple copies existed. And right now, they're being sent to every major news outlet in the world. He looked at the transmitter, saw the upload bar. 60%. Shut it down, he screamed at his men. One of them moved toward the equipment. Ms. Harlow stepped in front of it. You'll have to go through me, she said. The man raised his gun. Everything happened so fast. A gunshot rang out. Ms. Harlow pushed me aside, and the bullet meant for me hit her instead. She collapsed, clutching her shoulder, blood seeping between her fingers. Ms. Harlow, I screamed, dropping beside her. Finish the upload, she gasped, her face pale with pain. Don't stop. Finish it. 70%. 75%. I looked up at my stepfather, fury replacing my fear. I saw a flare gun mounted on the wall, emergency equipment from when the lighthouse was operational. I grabbed it and fired without thinking. The flare shot across the room and hit a fuel tank near the pier outside. The explosion was massive, a ball of fire and smoke that lit up the night sky. The shockwave shattered windows. Men dove for cover, shouting and scrambling away from the flames. The upload bar jumped. 85%. 90%. My stepfather staggered, disoriented from the explosion. He looked at me with something between rage and disbelief. You're going to destroy everything, he said. Decades of work. Billions of dollars. Dozens of careers. Your own family. You were never my family, I said coldly. 95%. 98%. He lunged toward the transmitter, desperate now. I tackled him. We both crashed to the floor. He was stronger, but I was angrier. I fought with everything I had. Then the transmitter beeped. A single, clear tone. 100%. Upload complete. No, my stepfather screamed. He shoved me away and ran for the balcony, trying to get away from the flames spreading from the explosion. But in his panic, his foot caught on broken glass from the shattered windows. He stumbled, reached for the railing, missed. I watched in horror as he fell from the lighthouse balcony into the water below. The splash echoed across the burning night. For a moment, everything was silent except for the crackling of flames. Then I heard them, helicopter blades. Real authorities this time, alerted by the massive explosion visible for miles.
Coast Guard, probably.
Maybe FBI. I crawled over to Miss Harlow. She was pale but conscious, still clutching her shoulder. "Did it work?" she whispered. I checked the screen. Transmission confirmed. Files received by 237 different recipients. "It worked," I said, tears streaming down my face. "We did it. We actually did it." She smiled weakly. "Your mother would be so proud." Emergency responders swarmed the island within minutes. Paramedics rushed to Ms. Harlow, loading her onto a stretcher. I stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand as they carried her to the emergency boat. "Don't you dare die on me," I told her. "You don't get to leave me alone now." "Not a chance," she murmured. I made a promise. The hours after the lighthouse turned into a blur of flashing lights, questions, and chaos. Federal agents separated me from Ms. Harlow for questioning. They sat me in a small room on a Coast Guard vessel and asked me to explain everything.
So I did.
I told them about the graduation dinner, about being kicked out, about Ms. Harlow's warning and the key, about discovering my real identity, my mother's disappearance, and the evidence in the basement, about the chase, the pier, the confession file. They listened, took notes, recorded every word. "The files you uploaded," one agent said carefully. "They're already spreading across the internet. News organizations are running stories. Social media is exploding. You just exposed one of the largest money laundering operations in U.S. history." "Good," I said simply. Within hours, the story detonated across every news channel. I watched it unfold on a television in the Coast Guard station, breaking news alerts, scrolling headlines, shocked anchors struggling to process the magnitude of what had been revealed. High-profile arrests started immediately. Businessmen led away in handcuffs. Politicians resigning in disgrace. Bank accounts frozen. Offshore holdings seized. The triangular crest symbol appeared in dozens of reports, identified now as the mark of a criminal syndicate that had operated in plain sight for decades. My stepfather's empire collapsed overnight. His name became synonymous with corruption and greed. The Rivers family disappeared from their home, fleeing before they could be arrested. Dylan's smug face appeared in mugshots on the news. Public outrage was immediate and fierce. People demanded justice, demanded answers, demanded that everyone involved be held accountable. They called it the Lighthouse Files. My mother's final gift to the world. Ms. Harlow recovered in a hospital room under federal protection. I visited her every day, bringing her books and terrible hospital food we complained about together. The bullet had damaged her shoulder, but missed anything vital. She'd need physical therapy, but she'd be okay. "You saved my life," I told her one afternoon as we watched the news together. "You saved mine first," she said with a smile. "By being worth saving." 3 weeks after the lighthouse, I received a letter. Not through normal mail, delivered by a federal agent who handed it to me with careful ceremony. The return address was a secure facility I'd never heard of. My hands shook as I opened it. "Dear Elena," it read. "My name is Marissa Fallon. I'm your mother, and I'm alive." I couldn't breathe. The words swam on the page. The letter explained everything. How she'd turned herself in under a false identity, agreeing to witness protection in exchange for her silence. How she'd been kept in a secure facility for 18 years, unable to contact anyone, unable to even confirm she existed. How the organization's power was so extensive that coming forward would have meant death for both her and me. But now, because of what I'd done, because of the evidence I'd released, it was finally safe. The organization was destroyed. The powerful people who'd kept her hidden were in prison or on the run. She could finally come home. She wanted to meet me. The reunion was arranged at a park. Neutral ground. Federal agents positioned discreetly nearby for protection, but giving us space. They'd offered to do it in a secure facility, but I'd insisted on somewhere real. Somewhere with sunlight and air and life. I sat on a bench, the same bench where I'd slept the night of my graduation, where Miss Harlow had first found me with a warning and a key. It felt like years ago instead of weeks. Like I was a completely different person than the scared, abandoned girl who'd curled up here in the dark. Then I saw her. A woman walking slowly down the path, hesitant, as if afraid I might disappear if she moved too quickly. Dark hair streaked with gray. My eyes exactly my eyes. My nose. The smile I'd seen in photographs, but never in real life. She was older than in the photos, marked by years of stress and fear and isolation, but unmistakably the woman from the pictures in that hidden office. Unmistakably the woman who'd given me life and then given up everything to keep me alive. My mother, Marissa Fallon. The woman who'd haunted every question I'd asked for the past month. The ghost who'd suddenly become real. She stopped a few feet away, her hand covering her mouth, tears streaming down her face, her whole body trembling. "Elena," she whispered, her voice breaking on my name. "My baby girl. You're so grown up. You're so beautiful. I can't believe I'm seeing you. I can't believe you're real." I stood on shaking legs, unable to speak, unable to do anything but stare at her. This woman who'd sacrificed herself for me before I could even remember her face. "Mom." The word came out like a question, like a prayer, like something I'd been waiting my whole life to say and mean. She opened her arms, and that simple gesture broke something open inside me. I ran to her and collapsed into her embrace, sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. She held me tight, so tight, like she was afraid I'd slip away. She stroked my hair, kissed the top of my head, whispered things I couldn't quite hear through my crying but felt in my bones. We sank onto the bench together, neither of us wanting to let go, both of us shaking with the weight of 18 years of separation finally ending. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying, the words tumbling out between her own sobs. "I'm so sorry I couldn't be there. I'm so sorry for everything you went through. For every birthday I missed. Every nightmare I couldn't comfort you through. Every moment I should have been there and wasn't. I'm so sorry, Elena. I'm so sorry. You kept me safe," I said through my tears, pulling back just enough to see her face. "You gave up everything to keep me safe. You spent 18 years in hiding so I could live. That's not something to apologize for. That's everything." "I wanted to be your mother," she whispered. "Not just the person who gave birth to you. I wanted to raise you, watch you grow up, be there for all of it." "You are my mother," I said firmly. "You've always been my mother. And we have time now. We have all the time in the world." We talked for hours. She told me about the years in witness protection, the agony of not knowing how I was, the constant fear that something would happen to me before she could ever come back. I told her about the Rivers, about school, about Miss Harlow watching over me all those years. "I need to thank her," my mother said. "She kept her promise. She protected you when I couldn't." "She's at the hospital," I said. "She'd love to see you." The three of us met the next day in Miss Harlow's hospital room. When my mother walked in, Miss Harlow's face crumpled with relief and joy. "You're alive," Miss Harlow whispered. "After all this time, you're really alive." "Thanks to you," my mother said, taking her hand. "Thanks to both of you." In the weeks that followed, life slowly began to settle into something resembling normal. My mother was debriefed extensively by federal authorities. Ms. Harlow was offered a job with a legitimate private investigation firm.
And me?
I was offered protection, relocation, a new identity if I wanted it. But I didn't want to hide anymore. I'd spent my whole life being hidden, being kept quiet, being made invisible. I testified at trials. I gave interviews. I told my story to anyone who would listen. Not for fame. I hated the attention. But because people needed to understand how corruption worked, how the powerful protected themselves, and how one person with the truth could make a difference. Colleges reached out with scholarship offers. Advocacy groups wanted me to speak. Journalists wanted to write books about my story. It was overwhelming. But my mother was there to help me navigate it. And Ms. Harlow too, recovered now and back on her feet. 6 months after the lighthouse, I enrolled in college. Criminal justice. I wanted to understand the systems that had allowed my mother's nightmare to happen. I wanted to help prevent it from happening to others. On my first day of classes, I received a package. Inside was a brass key on a chain, the same key that had started everything. Ms. Harlow had cleaned it, polished it, turned it into a necklace. The note with it read, "Sometimes the smallest keys unlock the biggest truths. Keep fighting for them. Love, Ms. H." I put it on and never took it off. My life had been torn apart at that graduation dinner. My world had collapsed in a single night. But from that destruction, something new had grown. Something real. I had my mother back. I had Ms. Harlow in my life. I had a purpose, a future, a truth that had set me free even as it had nearly destroyed me. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about my stepfather. About the sound of his splash hitting the water. About whether he survived, whether he'd ever face trial. The authorities said his body was never found. Maybe he drowned. Maybe he escaped. I'd probably never know. But what I did know was this. He'd spent 18 years trying to keep me silent, trying to keep me small and afraid and ignorant. And in the end, I was the one who spoke. I was the one who exposed the truth. I was the one who survived. 1 year after that terrible graduation dinner, my mother and I stood in front of a different restaurant. A better one. One we'd chosen together. The kind of place with real tablecloths and soft music and windows that looked out over the park where we'd first reunited. The year had been hard. Therapy. Depositions. Adjusting to having a mother after 18 years without one. Learning to trust again. Learning to feel safe. There were nightmares. Days when I couldn't get out of bed. Moments when the trauma of everything caught up with me and knocked me flat. But there were good days too. Days when my mother and I cooked dinner together and laughed at our mistakes. Days when Ms. Harlow visited and told stories about my mother from before everything fell apart. Days when I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was going to be okay. "Ready?" my mother asked, squeezing my hand. She did that a lot now. Touched me constantly, like she was still making sure I was real. I squeezed back, feeling the weight of the brass key necklace against my chest.
Yeah.
"I'm ready." We walked inside together, mother and daughter, reunited at last, to celebrate my 19th birthday. My first real birthday with my real family. Not the Rivers with their fake smiles and cold shoulders, but the people who'd fought for me, who'd risked everything for me, who'd loved me even when it cost them everything. Miss Harlow was already inside, waiting at a table with balloons and streamers and an actual cake with candles. When she saw us, she stood and smiled, that same warm smile she'd given me in the cafeteria line 1,000 times, back when I thought she was just a kind lunch lady and not the guardian angel my mother had sent to watch over me. "There's my girl," she said, pulling me into a hug. Her shoulder was still healing but much stronger now. 19. Can you believe it? "I can barely believe I made it to 18, I said with a laugh that only partially covered the truth of those words. We sat down together. We ordered too much food. We laughed and told stories and made plans for the future. My mother talked about maybe opening a small accounting firm, using her skills to help small businesses instead of exposing criminal ones. Ms. Harlow talked about teaching self-defense classes to young women. I talked about my classes, about the professors who inspired me, about the difference I wanted to make. It felt normal. Wonderfully, beautifully, impossibly normal. At one point, my mother raised her glass. "To Elena," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "The bravest person I know. Who survived what I couldn't. Who finished what I started. Who gave us all a second chance at life." Ms. Harlow raised her glass too. To second chances. To promises kept. To family, not the one you're born with, but the one you fight for. I raised my own glass, tears in my eyes, but smiling through them. To the truth. To survival. To home. We clinked glasses, and in that moment, I thought about everything that had led here. The graduation dinner from hell.
The cold night on the bench.
The mysterious key. The office full of secrets. The chase through the city. The evidence in the basement. The video of my mother's face. The gunfire at the lighthouse. The upload bar crawling toward completion. Ms. Harlow bleeding, but telling me to finish. The explosion. The fall. The truth finally coming to light. All of it had broken me. But somehow, impossibly, it had also made me whole. I thought about that cold night on the bench when she'd found me with a mysterious warning and a brass key. When she'd said, "Everything will make sense." She'd been right. It hadn't made sense then, but it did now. Everything had changed, just like she promised it would that first night when my world fell apart. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't running from the truth anymore. I was living in it.
Free. Safe.
Finally, truly home. If you discovered your entire life was built on a lie meant to protect you, would you have been brave enough to expose the truth even if it meant losing everything? If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about courage, betrayal, and the families we choose for ourselves.